Today's tutorial is the first in a series of tutorials looking at iMovie and Final Cut Pro. As this is my first video in the series, I want to show you how easy it is to create a project in each application, so you can see which one better suits your needs. Perhaps you're producing videos and monetizing them. You're doing this through YouTube or by selling the content to your customers. Or maybe you're producing videos for fun, either on YouTube or by creating videos for friends and family. Either way, you want to produce quality output. Perhaps some of you are afraid to make your own movies. You have hundreds of clips stored on your computer and smartphone. If you've never used a video editor, just watch my first section to see how easy it is to use iMovie, and then try it yourself. iMovie has a very simple interface. Since I haven't used it before, I don't have any other projects to be able to open up. So I'm going to go ahead and click Create New. I'm going to choose Movie. I don't want to create a trailer. So here we go, a very simple setup. We have our preview screen here on the right. Here we get to play our clips, and we get to play the project. On the left side, we have information. We can pull down media, audio, any title. So if we want to put text over our video, this is where we can grab that information from. We can choose different backgrounds, and we can do transitions. But what I'm lacking right now is I'm lacking some video clips. So I'm going to bring in 4 video clips of my son. This was last Christmas with the city. And you guys have to let me know, have you guys ever heard of the Christmas pickle? There's a story behind the Christmas pickle. Basically, it's an ornament that he hangs on the tree. But yeah, Christmas pickle. I've never heard of that before. Okay, so let's take a look here. So my first clip is 5.2 seconds long. As I move the cursor over it, the playhead moves with it. So this allows me to preview the clip so I can choose my in and out points instead of bringing down the entire clip. So I press I, that marks the in point, and just before the camera moves, I'm going to choose my out point. And then I just have to press E to drag it down to the timeline. Now in this next video here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to mark my in point. And right about there is going to be the end point. Now I could use the mouse and I could drag it down by just clicking on it and bringing it down, but I like to click E. It's very simple to use. Now what you notice, if you go back up and take a look at the clips, you'll see that there's a red line right here. And what that's telling me is that I've already grabbed this part of the clip and dragged it to my timeline. That's very helpful when you're dealing with really long clips. So I'm going to try right up, let's see, in point there. Perfect. Out point, press E and bring it down to the timeline. So now I have 3 clips. I'm trying to show you guys how easy it is to create a project in iMovie. So I got my in and out points, press E again, and so there we go, we got 4 clips. That's good enough for now. Now, if I want to see what the entire project looks, I just drag the playhead to the beginning, and I just press the L key. Press K to stop it. What I really recommend you guys using, instead of using the menu, is get used to using the keyboard. So take a look at the keys J, K, and L. If I press L, it plays normally. If I press J, it plays backwards. If I press K, it stops. Now if I hold down K and press either L or J, it advances 1 frame at a time, or it backs up 1 frame at a time. This is very, very handy. For example, let's say I wanted to just remove or trim the clip a little bit. So I can go right to there. And you know what, I'm going to trim it like this, so I'll mark the playhead. Oops, let's try that again. And bring it to that point there. We'll do that one more time. So let's take a look at this clip here. And I just want to trim it a little bit. So I can press and hold down K press L and move it one frame at a time. And once I'm got the point where I want to trim it, move the playhead, tap it. So you can see it's marked. And then I just drag. There we go. That's very handy. I use that all the time when I'm editing. I use it in Final Cut Pro. I use it in iMovie. The same keys work. Same with marking the in and out points and E. They work the same in both programs. Okay, so one other thing I like to do before I start adding transitions or anything, I like to adjust the white balance. Now in iMovie, usually what I do is I just come up here and I choose auto. And most of the times it does a pretty good job. If it doesn't, I recommend setting the white balance manually. So click white balance. There we go. And I would have some sort of marker in the screen that I could tap on, click, and it would balance based on that being the right white. The next thing I want to do is I want to add some transitions. Now normally I'm perfectly happy using what is called a butt cut. Basically you bring the clips down and there's no transition or effect between each clip. I just like to keep it simple and one flows to the next. And there's something to be said for that. However, there are times when we do want to use transitions, and the cross dissolve is a very common transition. It's just as simple as dragging it down, done. I can preview what that is like. Let's go see how that looks. There we go. I can go ahead and I can share that. I can put it on YouTube, send it to iTunes, or I can save it as a file. Resolution 1080p, and I can drop that down if I want. But my source content was only 1080p, so I can't do 4K in this case. I can see the file size, it's about 17 megabytes. Quality's high. ProRes. Yeah, I'm not going to do that now. And this is fine. Then I click Next. And there we go. And you can see the progress right up here in the top right. It's a very short project, so it doesn't take very long at all. Now, let's take a look at Final Cut Pro. To get started, let's create a library. So go to the File menu, choose New, and Library. We'll give it a simple title. You can see my other YouTube projects here. So let's just give it a simple title, Final Cut Tutorial. And save it. I'm not ready to bring in content yet. In iMovie, you just start bringing in content. But in Final Cut Pro, you have to think things through a little bit. You have 3 different places you can bring in information. A library contains everything. It's got all your media, it's got your timeline, your edit points, everything. If you copy your library to an external device and connect that device to another computer, you'll be able to edit just where you left off on your other computer as long as you chose to copy the files to the library. That's why I always recommend copying files to the library. Events are kind of like scenes or acts. So if you've got a long project, you might want to break them up into different scenes. Those scenes contain media, audio, and they can contain projects. A project is just simply the timeline. It's all your edit points. You can have multiple projects in a single event. Think of a movie, for example. You can have a director's cut, and you can have a theatrical release. It's all using the same content. You just have a different edit. So let's rename this event to Tutorial. For this tutorial, we're just going to have a single event. Now, let's go ahead and create a project. Let's go ahead and name it Tutorial. Then click OK. By clicking OK, I'm letting Final Cut decide the format, resolution, rate, and how it's rendered, as well as the stereo information, whether it's 44 kilohertz or not. Let me show you what happens if I go ahead and set it manually. So I can go ahead and choose New Project. I'll call this one Tutorial. Just call it Tutorial 2. And now I'm going to manually tell it, yes, it's 1080p, 1920 by 1080 at 29.97 frames a second. P stands for progressive. I'm not going to get into details of what progressive and interlace is, but pretty well all DSLRs and mirrorless cameras are going to be shooting progressive, so it really doesn't matter. I want to render in Apple ProRes 422. This is a really good editing codec because it preserves a lot more of the color information. As I do effects and everything, I'm preserving the color information, dynamic range, and it's very, very fast, so I highly recommend that. And yes, I want to do 48 kilohertz. The other options there are 32, 44, 88, and so on. Stick to 48. You want to match your camera essentially here, and my camera does default to 48 kilohertz. So now I can click OK. We have not even brought in any media yet, and I've already gone through a lot more steps than I did with iMovie. But this gives us more control over our projects. This gives us more controls on how we organize the information, and it makes it easier to be mobile later on. I have two projects here. Why would I want two projects? If I was creating a movie, I would have a theatrical release versus a director's cut. Why you might want to have more than one project, I don't know. All right, let's go import some content. I usually press Command-I, and that'll bring up this window here. I'm going to go and find, where's my content folder? Right here. And let's do 2019. Use the same. Do I have the same video files? Let's see, where are we? Let's see if I can use the same video file. Oh, you know, I'll just use different video files. It doesn't really matter. I'll import four of them. Now over here, I'm going to add that to my existing event tutorial. I'm going to choose to copy files to the library. Again, I always do this, so that way, wherever my library is, I've got all my content there. If I choose to leave files in place, I detach my SSD and I take my laptop. I'm not going to have access to that content that was on my computer until I bring it back in dock. So I always use copy to the folder. Assign roles, I don't worry about that. I don't worry about transcoding. And I don't usually like to let it automatically analyze video for balance. I like to do that manually, so all the stuff I leave. So I can go ahead and import all of them here. But I could actually click on each individual clip here and mark in and out points so I don't have to bring in the whole clip. So here we go. I have my 4 clips here, and I'm going to preview the first one. What do I want here? Yeah, let's just get a bit there. So press I to mark my in point. I highly recommend using the J, K, and L key to preview as well as edit the timeline. Mark my out point, and again press E. So if you ever go from iMovie, if you start with iMovie and move to Final Cut, a lot of the key shortcuts are identical. Let's zoom in a little bit here. I'm going to give myself some more space here, so I'm going to turn off the transitions. Let's go back up here and, okay, good. Okay, mark my in point there. Out point and press E to drag it to the timeline. Next one. Okay, he's putting one on, mark my in point. Okay, so I'm going to get 2 clips from this one here. One of the head itself and mark my in point. Good. Press O for my out point and press E, drag it down to the timeline. And now let's get a shot of him. Let's see, is this clip going to allow that? It's a bit too shaky, this footage here. Presses anyhow, out, drag it down to the timeline. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. And the playhead functions pretty much the same way. It will follow. As long as I keep these guys turned on here, the playhead will automatically follow my cursor. But I can turn that off by unchecking these 2 gadgets here, right? So this will turn video and audio skimming on or off, which is really good. I could use the S key. Same over here. And Shift S for this one here. These are really good. I like being able to have it on automatically because it allows me to preview by dragging my playhead across the project. All right, I want to preview, so I move it to the front, tap on the mouse, and just press L and I can start playing. That's pretty good. Now you can see in Final Cut that I have my audio down below. in the clip. It's not playing right now. I have that turned off, or it'd be a little bit loud and a little bit annoying. So let's go ahead and fix the color. It's a little bit different in Final Cut. So over here, I can choose to balance the color. I can match the color. I can show color inspector. There's auto enhance mode too. So this is what we have in iMovie. I really don't like to use the auto enhance. I don't mind balancing the color automatically. A lot of times it works out pretty well. I'm shooting with a Canon 70D, and outside there's really very little I have to correct. Now in this case here, I know that this particular piece of paper is quite white. So what I can do is I can come up here and I can choose not to take the automatic method, and I can choose white balance, and it gives me the eyedropper. I go ahead and click right on this piece of paper. Much better white balance. Now what I can go ahead and do, and you can't do this in iMovie, I can go ahead and choose to copy this clip, and I can go ahead and paste the edit attributes that I did on that one clip over these 3 clips. So I've highlighted all of these clips here, and I press Shift, Command V, and right here it shows me all the effects that I can choose to bring over. So in this case, I only did the color balance, but that's what I want to bring over, and boom. It's already been applied. So if I click on this one here, you can see up here, yeah, I set the white balance using that piece of paper from this clip over here. It's very, very powerful. Now this isn't currently rendering because I turned it off. So I'll turn on background render. The nice thing about Final Cut is if I'm not doing anything, it's automatically going to render in the background, which transitions. Over on the right here, I have effects and I have transitions. Effects is something that iMovie doesn't have. iMovie does have a lot of transitions, not as much as Final Cut, but to be honest with you, I don't use more than, you know, fade to color or the cross dissolve. I just usually work with the basics. So let's bring in that fade to color. I really like that one. It's usually how I start off. And I want to bring in a dissolve. And you can see it's already ready to go. Even though it hasn't rendered, I can go ahead and preview. Now, if I want to change how long it takes to do the resolve, I can shorten it, which gives me a different look. It's very quick. I kind of like that. Or I can make it a whole lot longer to the point where it's just silly. Let's go ahead. Okay, so now let's go ahead and export. So under the File menu, I can choose Share, and I have a few more options here. I can create a master file. These are very, very big. There's no compression in there at all, so they're just massive files. Or I can actually automatically publish it to my finally rendered in 1080p or 4K. So what I like to do to have complete control is I'll send it to Compressor, and it's already been brought in, and then I choose Publish to YouTube. So I drag this down, and this is good for 4K files as well. And then I'll just start the batch. Press this, and it'll automatically generate my file for me. It's that simple. Where Compressor is really helpful is when I bring in all my clips from the camera. I might have 20 different videos, and I like to bring those into Apple ProRes 422 for the reasons I mentioned before. Helps me protect the dynamic range and the color information. But to do that to each individual file would be rather intensive. Well, what I can do here is I just go back to this screen here. I can drag all the files in here, 20 of them, drag Apple ProRes 422 over to it, and it's going to go and automatically convert. When I first started doing this, I heard people say, yes, you should use Apple ProRes 422. You're going to get better results. You're going to be happy with it. Things are going to be faster. And I just kind of laughed it off, going like, yeah, I'm new. I don't really need this. It wasn't until this year where I started producing really, really big files with 4K video in them that things started to slow down a little bit. Once I converted everything to Apple ProRes 422, everything was snappy and fast. So, and you get Final Cut Pro, think of getting. So that's it. That's a brief look at creating simple videos with an iMovie. If you have any questions at all regarding the content I've covered today, what you want to see covered in the future, or any comment in general about my channel, drop me a comment down below. I'm very punctual at responding to you guys within 24 hours. If you would like to receive notifications of new videos as they come out, go ahead and click subscribe, then click the bell icon which shows up after you click subscribe and choose all. You'll get an email notification and a notification at the top of the screen. Thank you. We'll see you soon.